mean, this
on
is a
that's not
joke.
what
This is such a joke, man. Like, I can't believe this is really pathetic. It's really bad on your part. It's really a bad look. It's so bad.
So my moral foundation would include secular humanism, and that is using reason and rationality to place the health and well-being of people in our society first, and to do the best to reduce the most amount of harm that we can. I think that's the way that our society can flourish. Yeah.
How is killing a baby 2 days before the due date rational? Or reducing harm.
Yeah, that's another one of those straw men that you were trying to.
That's what you say the law should be.
No. So what I
yes or
said
no? Did you say the law
no,
should allow that?
Shut the fuck up, Rob.
No,
God damn it! If you want me to answer, if you want me to answer the question, I'll answer the question. But until you quit your bitching and allow me to answer, then I will.
A yes, no would suffice. Do you think the law should allow abortions to occur 2 days before the due date?
I think abortion should be done. Should be allowed the entire pregnancy.
Right. So then I was correct in what I said.
No, you're not correct in what you said, because you were loading up what you said with a false premise that I would not agree to. I personally wouldn't approve of somebody getting an abortion of a perfectly healthy fetus 2 days before delivery. I don't support that. But should abortion be allowed the entire pregnancy? Yes, because later term abortions are necessary when there are medical problems. I think that abortions being allowed the entire pregnancy and being widely available are going to reduce the amount of time it takes for a woman to get an abortion, and therefore there are no elective later term abortions in that scenario. So no, I don't agree with a perfectly healthy fetus being aborted 2 days before delivery. Right? That's not what I agreed to, and you keep straw manning me on it, and you look disingenuous as fuck.
I don't look disingenuous.
Please continue to bitch.
I don't look disingenuous. It doesn't matter what you personally would support. There are all kinds of things that I think should be legal that shouldn't be made illegal that I don't support. So I'll ask you, I guess, more clearly this time. Should it be legal for a woman to abort a healthy baby 2 days before?
I'm sorry, I wasn't listening to you. What?
I understand that's been the majority of the debate. Should it be legal for a woman to abort a healthy baby 2 days before the due date?
I think abortion should be allowed the entire pregnancy.
So then the point I'm trying to make is your rational system that you claim your moral foundation is would lead to a system where it would be legal in the most irrational way that I can imagine to exterminate a baby 2 days before the due date for any reason that the woman chooses whatsoever. That is not rational. That is monstrous. You saying, well, legally it should be allowed to happen, but I would be against it would be no different than saying, legally I think you should be allowed to murder people. However, I'd be against it. I'd recommend against it. It doesn't matter. Your moral framework allows it to be more.
Straw man that Rob just did there, because he asked me, should a healthy baby be able to be aborted 2 days before? I simply said, I think abortion should be allowed the entire pregnancy, right? That does not affirm what he said or anything like that, but yet he took it as an affirmation that like maybe I would abort a baby, or I would support measures that would allow healthy babies to be aborted 2 days before delivery. That's not what I said. I said abortion should be allowed the full length of the pregnancy. And there are multiple caveats that I've already described in this entire debate. Just because you either don't understand or refuse to listen to my caveats, that's not my problem.
So what just happened there was I asked you point blank, should abortion of a healthy baby be allowed 2 days before the pregnancy? Your answer to that was, I think abortion should be allowed the entire way through the pregnancy. Anyone with any sort of logical understanding of listening to this would assume that you were answering my question in the affirmative, saying, yes, for any reason, there should be allowed to be an abortion. When your excuse is, oh, no, I was intentionally not answering your question. That's your excuse?
Right. I was intentionally not answering your question because you were wanting me to answer yes or no, and I was not going to do that. Instead, I was going to stick with what I actually support, and that's that abortion should be allowed the entire pregnancy.
So this does two things. One, it shows that he's not engaged in this discussion in good faith, because he's willing to mislead. He's not willing to answer the question whatsoever.
Can we move on to the next super chat?
He's not willing to answer the question whatsoever, and instead he's willing to deflect and allow the assumption to be given that he said one thing. Secondly, then I will ask him the question point blank then and see if if he could give a honest answer.
And I refuse to answer loaded questions.
If you're going to refuse,
fine.
then it would be the same as if I said, I refuse to answer any questions that are offered here because I interpret them as loaded. It's nonsensical. The nature of a good-spirited debate and a debate that would occur in good faith, the nature of...
Anybody can refuse to engage with a question if they would like to.
Okay, that's fine.
You guys are providing your time here. You guys are welcome to.
If that's going to be, if that's the charity that's given to me from my opponent here, I'll respond in kind. And then the debate won't be very fruitful. I've been very considerate in trying to have a fruitful debate and answering questions that were posed to me and engaging in a back and forth. If my opponent is going to intentionally mislead and refuse to answer questions because he deems that they are loaded, then I'll return that courtesy in kind. But I'm ready to move forward.
So yeah, I totally think that the questions, both from the super chat and from you, are loaded. And so I answered them as honestly as I could.
I will say that this shows that a secular humanist will be unwilling to have a good faith conversation because any question that would be difficult within their moral framework, they'll say that's loaded. I refuse to answer, which shows that any sort of rational discourse would be impossible because anytime we would have difficult questions,
just because I'm not going to allow you to
anytime we would have difficult questions that would come up in the term of legislation or anything like that,
that doesn't mean that I'm being
people like him will just say,
hey, let's get out of the meta and get back onto the topic. We don't need to keep
the topic is referencing specifically a secular humanist perspective and how anytime there would be difficult legislation that would come up, people like him would say, we refuse to tackle the issue because we think the issue is loaded. That's nonsensical. But again, I'll respond in kind the rest of the way through the debate.
Nope. That's not what I would do, and that's a total misrepresentation of my position. I'm not.
Then why can't you just answer the question?
Kind of indication, because you want me to answer in a certain way. Right?
I want you to answer truthfully with what you believe.
And that's why you loaded up the question.
No, I want you to answer with what you believe. That's all. I'm trying to figure out what your perspective is. That's it.
Okay.
You're the one who's called me
abortion
racist.
Should be allowed the entire pregnancy. I would not support aborting a healthy fetus 2 days before delivery.
Would you allow it to be legal?
Yes, it needs to be legal.
Okay, then we're right back to where we started. I mean, this is outlandish. We just went through this whole rigmarole, and I was correct in your interpretation that, yes, it should be legal to abort a healthy baby 2 days before the due date. What was all of this fighting about?
See, this entire thing is a disingenuous painting me into a corner here, trying to get me to answer in a certain way, right? I tried to put the caveat first and then answered with what I would do, and then you disingenuously reframe it as me allowing something to happen. Now, I already explained how if we make abortion illegal for the entirety of the pregnancy, and we provide ready access to abortion services, then the only abortions that are going to occur in that scenario are not going to be healthy fetuses. They are only going to be medical emergencies to where we're saving either the mother or the child or both. And so that's what my actual position is. It's more complicated and nuanced. Just because it doesn't fit into your script doesn't mean that I'm not answering the question.
It's not complicated or nuanced whatsoever. My point is that anyone with any degree of rationality can see that a baby 2 days before the due date. No, I'm going to address this point because I think it gets right to the heart of what we're talking about. Of our foundational. Right. I understand.
Say a certain thing.
It has nothing to do with wanting you to say a certain thing. I'm asking you a question that gets to the root of what your morality is. And you say that your morality comes from this sort of rational discussion that comes through secular humanism. I'm directly pointing out that almost every human being, again, you just keep interrupting and you're using terms that you don't even know what they mean. It's not a whataboutism.
I do know what it means. Your whataboutism.
Define whataboutism. Define
it. Proposing some hypothetical situation to see how what I'm laying out.
That's not whataboutism.
Play out.
That's not what whataboutism
is.
Define whataboutism.
I just fucking did.
Define it.
I will give you a formal definition.
Sure.
Define whataboutism. Sorry, I got slow internet. Just wait 1 second. Whataboutism is a rhetorical tactic or logical fallacy in which someone responds to an accusation or difficult question by making a counter accusation or raising a different issue, often with phrases like, but what about? This strategy seeks to deflect attention from the original criticism, muddying the waters and reducing the seriousness of the initial point by implying hypocrisy or diverting the conversation, which is what you're fucking doing, Rob.
That's not.
That's what about.
I mean, I don't know what to say.
About a fetus that's 2 days from delivery?
I don't know what to say. The fact that you just read that and you can't obviously understand what it says, or that you're bad faith and do understand it or pretending you don't, shows once more the failures of secular humanism, that you're not capable of having a rational discussion. Let me try this. Let me try this in a different way. No, I'm going to. Let me try this in a different way. Let me try this in a different way.
So it doesn't matter.
I stated. Hold on. I stated my position about having abortion
and I understand this is how mega bloodbath debate is done.
Goes,
so I'm going to be able to keep talking until we'll be able to say this. Right? I'm going to get out my point to talk about this. So I'm going to be able to say, I'm going to be able to go ahead and get my point out. That's the point of these sorts of debate. And so I'm not going to leave filibuster open
for one moment. So we have to be able to have a productive conversation here. As I said, y'all are both welcome to, if you don't like a question, there's a couple super chats that are very mean that I may summarize, right, instead of reading the actual super chats. You can opt out of a question here and there. Obviously, don't do it for the whole
Taco?
debate. Yes, sir?
I know of one super chat, and I just got to tell you, if you read it, I will not come back on your show, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to finish my point. Let's try a different tack then. When you ask me, if my framework of Christian nationalism would allow slavery, was that whataboutism?
Sorry, what?
When you asked me if my framework of Christian nationalism would allow slavery, was that whataboutism?
Did it include, well, what about this?
You're asking me, what about slavery? Would you allow it? So it's a whataboutism that you issue.
That's not whataboutism, because it like slavery is directly supported by Christianity, and it for the majority of Christian history it has been supported by Christianity.
So when you ask me,
it's not a whataboutism thing.
So when you ask me directly, would your form of Christianity allow this? That's not whataboutism. But when I say, would your form of secular humanism allow this? That is whataboutism.
Because your Christianity directly supports.
It doesn't matter if it directly supports.
I don't understand what you're.
It doesn't matter. Your interpretation is you think it directly supports.
No, it does matter. I can explain why.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't include what about. No, my position.
I mean, this
on
is
that,
a joke.
What
this is such a joke, man. Like I can't believe this is really pathetic. It's really bad on your part. It's really a bad look. It's so bad. Like, the point is, what you're going to do is say, here is the moral framework you've outlined, and I'm going to ask you difficult questions on difficult moral positions and see what you think that framework would justify. And I'm going to do the same to you as secular humanism. I've answered all of your questions directly. With me, you're like, I refuse to be forthright because I think the question is loaded and I'll call it whataboutism. You're fundamentally misunderstanding what whataboutism means. The definition you read doesn't support what you're saying.
I'm sorry, Taco, I would love to clarify here and explain why me asking about slavery is not whataboutism. Can I please get some time to explain that, Rob? Are you going to allow me some time? Or are you going to continue?
Are you amenable to that, Rob?
What? That's fine. He can explain. I know what his answer is. I can answer for him. He's already said it.
Go ahead. Do it.
You're going to say, go ahead. The reason I asked that's because Christianity, in my interpretation, supports slavery. So I think it's important to ask you, to which I'll turn, in turn, what I would say is secular humanism supports abortion, even at late terms. That's why I directly asked you. Equivalent, that's apples to apples. Why is one whataboutism and the other not?
Well, so the reason why the slavery is not whataboutism is because for the majority of Christian history, Christianity has supported slavery, and it has been interpreted that way. And if given the chance, white Christian nationalists would implement slavery again due to the very explicit calls for slavery in the not only the Old Testament, but also the acceptance of it in the New Testament, and the reaffirming by Jesus of the Old Testament laws. And so that's not whataboutism, because it actually did happen, and it is actually supported by Christianity. And for a majority of Christian history, it is supported by that. Now, the reason why yours is whataboutism with the 2-day healthy fetus, or 2 days before delivery healthy fetus, is that is a social situation that you can only hypothetically propose, as opposed to something that is definitely like the standard or or even in my proposed solution here is even likely to happen. So that's why it's whataboutism, is because it's not like there's any kind of like hard evidence that is what would happen. And in fact, I would say that the motivation to get an abortion at a more appropriate time is greater on my solution than on your solution. And so those later term abortions simply wouldn't happen. So that whataboutism is not really all that effective. But I did, just to reiterate, I did answer your question about whether or not I think that that is okay to do. And so I did answer that.
Okay, so now the point is that word salad that he just gave is nonsensical to anyone who's being remotely objective here, and once more impugns what he says is the rational thought that comes through his moral foundation of secular humanism, once more proving that without an objective moral framework, it will always come down as subjective, insofar as he's literally trying to bend the term whataboutism, something that means when you accuse me of something, I imply that there's some sort of hypocrisy and means that what I'm doing is justified, into me asking difficult questions about his moral position is in itself whataboutism. His interpretation of Christian nationalism and what he calls white Christian nationalism, something that I haven't embraced, would lead to slavery is nonsensical. I don't think that the data backs that up. And just so he says that his interpretation is the Bible allows it, I don't think that that would be the case as how it would play out. Nonetheless, his interpretation of what he thinks would be allowed is irrelevant. It would be no different than if I said to him, well, I think that secular humanists have a long tradition, for as far as I've heard them talk, of embracing abortion for any reason if the woman and the doctor says that it should be allowed. And so given that that's the history of the majority of secular humanists, it's not whataboutism for me to ask you that specifically. All of this was him being disingenuous and trying to avoid a question by saying that it was, quote, loaded because he knew it would paint him in a bad light. I could say the same thing. I refuse to answer your question about slavery because I think it's loaded in an attempt to put me in my position in a bad light. But that would make for a very poor debate. I haven't done that. And I've sat here and allowed him in every instance to talk, even when he decided to do so at great length. After getting frustrated with it, well, I figured that I would then, when he talked over me, proceed to talk over him. But that's it. I entered this as good faith. I let him even smear me, call me racist, impugn me in a litany of ways. I don't give a shit. I got thick skin. It doesn't bother me whatsoever. It is clear that he's incapable of understanding what this term whataboutism means. It's clear that he's not rational because he can't give you an objective reason why a baby 2 days before the due date is any sort of biologically different than 1 day after the baby is born, and why it would justify exterminating that life. That means that he would violate his own principle that he said that a secular humanist wouldn't allow for the murder of innocent life when this clearly would constitute murder, which shows that we need an objective moral framework.
On that.
That's the point that I have.
Yeah, I did answer you on that last part.
After much ballyhoo, and you've proved yourself that your system
I
is not
you
rational.
Directly initially. You just don't you don't remember.
No, that's not true.
I'm sorry, Rob.
You didn't answer directly. You said what I thought was a direct answer. When I said it, you said that's
really
not
getting into the meta in a debate, and we have.
I'll finish this point real quick.
Yep.
I'll finish this point real quick. I thought you answered directly and we proceeded on, and you said, no, I didn't answer directly. You're assuming. And then we went for 5 minutes and you said, nope, my answer was as you interpreted it. That's you trying to be disingenuous. That's all it is.